How many of you in this room have never experienced innovation in life? Well, I don't see any hand raised, which is great because I'm talking to a room full of progressive minds. I've experienced innovation, and the list can be endless, but from the basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, to a landline, to mobile, analog photography, to digital photography, Blackberries to Android and iOS, robotic surgery, the Swiggies and the Zomatos, e-commerce. So many examples I can give you of innovation in my life that I have witnessed myself. I also consider law and order as one of the basic necessities and a right of me as a citizen of the country. And when the basic needs have gone through so much innovation in my own lifetime, how can law remain untouched? And how can law be immune to innovation? When I travel in a train, in a plane, I often have my co-passengers ask me, what do you do? And the immediate reply is, I'm a qualified lawyer. As soon as I finish, I'm a qualified lawyer, there's some, eyes are enlightened, but also they say that there's twinkle in the eyes, and the immediate question is civil or criminal. That's all that they know. If you're a lawyer, you're either civil or practitioner or a criminal practitioner. And then I say none of the above. And then they're obviously curious to know what you mean none of the above. I only know that lawyers can do either civil practice or criminal practice, or otherwise perhaps you would be a judge. That's all that layman knows. Similarly, if I was a layman and I was asked to imagine a courtroom, here's how I would imagine it. I would be looking at my watch. I've reached at 9:30, just before the session starts. I'm sitting at the back bench where all clients have to sit. It's 9:30, 9:45, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is when the session should start. The judge hasn't appeared. And around 10:30, we're still waiting. Everyone's waiting in the room. So is a room full of lawyers. And just then, a court clerk comes and says, Judge Saab aaj absent hai. Court is going to be vacant. 2 weeks later, I get another hearing. Opposite counsel, absent. 2 weeks later, again I get a hearing. My counsel tells me, don't come, I'm not in town. And 2 weeks again later, I do again get lucky. Every 2 weeks I'm getting, a hearing because I have a fresh case. But this time my case is listed at number 282, which again means there's going to be a Passover. So the silsila of tariq pe tariq just continues. That's my imagination as a layman of a courtroom. Similarly, when I have to imagine a lawyer, I see a man or a woman dressed in black and white, lots of junior lawyers, lots of people in the office, clerks working, lots of files and papers, a big library behind the desk of the lawyer. I see all manual work. Now, this is an example of traditional ways, the way a layman really imagines a lawyer, a judge, and law. But is that it? Today, the legal industry is going through a digital transformation. And I want to make you aware of the other side as well. There's so much innovation happening. I am a product of innovation. With the new roles, and again, the civil and the criminal, and none of the above, we have to understand that there are so many career opportunities which innovation in law has opened up. Today, lawyers are using online research tools which are AI-enabled and which are telling me just by typing, this is my problem, give me precedents, and here comes, like within a minute, I get all relevant precedents. Not only do I get relevant precedents, I also get a result saying that, these are case laws that you shouldn't cite in the court because they are being negatively treated or because these have been overruled. Traditionally, I would go to our library and turn pages after pages, books after books, and try to get that information, probably spend a whole day or 2 days to get that information, maybe more. Today, lawyers are drafting documents that they have to do on and on. Maybe there are big volumes, or maybe it's just repetitive. through automated templates. Lawyers are using generative AI to summarize documents for them, which helps them in prioritizing their work. What should I look at first when I'm, preparing for an investigation, a trial? What should I be looking at first? Lawyers are asking questions through a chatbot to pick up information and give me a ready information from my own opinions. So I have my data set of my own opinions, and I can just quickly ask, instead of again looking through papers and files and folders, I can just ask Gen AI to go look into my data and tell me the answer to the questions that I'm asking. Similarly, I could also ask Gen AI to draft documents. So for example, I could ask Gen AI to draft me an NDA by looking at the older NDAs that I have drafted. These are examples of using legal technology. Similarly, lawyers today are using, online methods, appearing virtually in the courts. Thanks to the pandemic, virtual courts became a reality. We saw lawyers appearing through, Zoom or whatever court, technology was, and it still continues in some cases. Clients are able to hear their hearing, through virtual means. Courts are laying emphasis on online dispute resolution. There are online platforms through which, you appoint a mediator, an arbitrator, the entire proceeding happens on that platform. Documents are saved on that platform. Every discussion is recorded, transcribed, translated where necessary, and the entire transaction, the entire proceeding happens online. There is flexible resourcing models. There are new billing models. There are ALSPs, which means alternative legal service providers, which are looking after the litigation support. So a lawyer just doesn't do legal advisory work. There's a lot of support work as well. And there are new organizations, one of them, as we knew them as LPOs, providing just these support services. Then we have new opportunities opening up. So again, going back to civil or criminal. Well, no, it's neither civil nor criminal. It is different types of practices. There are boutique law firms which are only offering services for startups. There are again specialized firms which are only doing ESG work. These are all examples of innovation in law. Now, as I talk about this, the unfortunate part is, the fortunate part is that I am working with all such progressive minds and lawyers. The unfortunate part is that this percentage is barely 5 to 10%. And we want that 5% to become 15 and then 25. And how do we do that? So what is holding us back? What are the obstacles? What are the roadblocks? The first and foremost is the mindset. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. No one is asking me to change. Why should I change? I have been doing this for hundreds of years. My seniors did it. I am doing it. And it's all going fine. So why are you asking us to change? That's one mindset. I don't want to change. Old is gold, and I wish to stay with that gold. There's also a genuine problem that lawyers are very busy. Innovation requires time. It requires commitment. I am too busy, and they are genuinely busy. So I don't have the time to be with you in your innovation journey. I can't help you, but I would love to see the change. The third is, I am very busy, but I'm going to take out time and I'll be with you. I will be with you wherever you need me, let me know. Any people you want me to meet, you want me to test, you want me to be a part of the process, workflow, I'll be there with you. But then you're not patient enough. So you reach midway, and then the first, second meeting you come, the third, fourth, you disappear. And then there are only follow-ups, follow-ups, follow-ups. Sometimes you are very patient, you are working along, and we've reached the end, but when you see the end product, you say, you know what? This does 1, 2, 3. What about 4? And then I say, the fourth one is for you to do. You are doing the fourth one. So, the expectations are that rejection because it doesn't do anything, whether it's a process, whether it is a technology, or otherwise, let it do everything. I want magic. So to set the expectations right. Another one is investment. Many of the innovation initiatives require investment. It's not easy. But is it, obviously when there is investment of time, money, effort, the expectations are returns, quantify in terms of money. At the very outset, it is very difficult to tell what exactly will the return be in terms of money. Often, the returns are goodwill. The returns are work-life balance, an improved retention, strengthening of your brand, and it may not convert into money. Another challenge is, while we talked about lawyers, the stakeholders, also the change makers. Do we have the right people, carrying out the change? Are the skills right? Do you know that what it takes to be a change maker? What are the skills required? It's not a 2 plus 2 equal to 4. It's not going to be a black and white. You cannot predict everything. There is no rule. You have to know what the challenges are. You have to work with people. You have to spend time in training. And you have to spend a lot of time in also implementing, reviewing, correcting, working with various stakeholders, not causing an upheaval, and yet bringing about a silent change. And later, when people start benefiting is when they realize, oh, this is a wonderful change. And that's your achievement. Now, having listed the barriers, there's also an easy way to navigate through those challenges. I do that every day. The most important one being create a culture of innovation. Empower people who are bringing about change. For everything, if I have to be scared, oh my God, what are people going to think? I have to go and take hundreds of permissions. I will not be able to do my job. So you have to have a nurturing environment. You have to have empowerment. I can do things. I know what is right, and people have to trust that I can do it. And most importantly, everything I do, I am not a beneficiary of those things. It is the practitioners, it is the clients who are the real beneficiaries. And therefore, it is very, very important for me to include these important stakeholders in my journey of innovation. I cannot be on a solo expedition. I have to work with them, collaborate with them to find solutions for them. And when they are a part of your journey, you will see that because they're going through that entire life cycle of exploring of identifying the problem, breaking down the problem, finding the solutions, exploring various solutions, some hits, some flops, they understand it. And when they understand the journey and they see the benefits, what happens then is you get a champion. And when there is one champion, imagine now this lawyer goes and talks to the lawyer sitting in the next room, saying that, what, I was preparing for this case. I went to this particular online research platform that, say, the innovation people introduced. I was very hesitant in the beginning because AI and all, God knows what it does, accuracy is a concern. But I was pleasantly surprised that it gave such wonderful results. And also I was going to cite one of the cases, and it said that, this one is a negatively treated case. So I went into it, I tried to understand how is it negative, and it actually was. And then I withheld myself from, producing that case in the court. And then you see what wonders this does to the others. It's a ripple effect, and then the other one goes to 10 others. So from 1 you go to 10, and 10 you go to 100, and that's how you create an impact in innovation. Also remember that it is very, very important when you are becoming a change maker, over communication. Talking more, meeting more is always good than sitting in your cocoon and imagining that people will know what you're doing. People are not going to know. They don't have the time, they're not bothered. So you have to go out, often much against your wishes, much against your nature, much against your leadership style. But if you've chosen to be a change maker, that's what you'll have to do. And when you are innovative, what really happens? When you are, we've got so many examples of innovators, of companies which were, the only players in the market. They had a monopoly, and because they either refused to innovate or they ignored innovation, the newer players didn't even take like a few months or years to go way ahead of them, and today those companies nobody really cares for, or perhaps some of them don't even exist. So someone who was like so strong in the market and had a hold could just wipe out because they were not innovative. So if we as lawyers are going to be innovative, we are surely going to be ahead of the curve. We are surely going to be more productive, more efficient, cost effective. We are going to have a competitive advantage over others. Just today I was reading an article, a news came out, where one of the big giant companies in the UK has come up with an evaluation criteria for its law firms who will be impaneled. That only those law firms, so they're going to give an edge to those law firms who are going to be using AI efficiently. Otherwise, you're out. So that is really the benefit of innovation. Also, there is a lot of prediction work. I talked about data. There is a compilation of data, and then you start, that's all data. For a lawyer, it's all data. But I talked about data scientists, and artificial intelligence, generative AI, working on that data and generating useful information that can predict even outcome of cases, that can predict how your case is going to go. Should you even be, fighting for it or not? That can tell you the various trends in various transactions and how the market is shaping up. So these are very important, benefits of innovation. There are also lots of new opportunities that arise. Like I said, boutique firms only specializing in services for startups, ALSPs, your ESG practice, IBC, all of these are all innovations. And I myself, like I said, I'm a product of innovation. Today, my career, I am growing because I've chosen the path of innovation. Now, with this, I'd like to wrap up giving two messages for the stakeholders as well as the change makers. For all the stakeholders related to law, whether you're a law firm, a judiciary, a law school, law student, legal tech vendor, even clients, a litigant, anybody who's related to law. If you are not innovating, if you are not looking around you, and we could call it innovation, we could just call it improvement, we could just call it getting better. Whatever clicks with you, whatever clicks with you. It doesn't have to be called innovation. If you are not thinking of being better, if you are not thinking of changing things, and if you're just going to sit, let's watch what the others are doing, if you're not challenging the status quo, then please just remember that the whole world is not going to wait for you, and you actually will be left behind. So I really believe that every stakeholder must bring about the change and must innovate. My second message is to the change makers. As much as this looks very, change makers, innovators, sounds like very glamorous, very attractive, lots of fun. For sure, there is a lot of fun. But if that is what is attracting you, stay away. Because you have no idea how many challenges are going to be there in this whole journey. It's a slow journey, slow and steady will win the race. It is not going to give you immediate results. You require a lot of patience. You require a lot of self-patting on the back. You have to be a self-starter. You have to be a self-motivated person. You cannot give up. You cannot expect anybody to come and just, say, oh, wonderful, this is so fantastic, and all the time looking for appreciation. That's not going to happen. You'll receive very few thank yous. The only way that you can get through this journey is your own passion. If you have the passion to drive change, if you have the patience to drive change, go for it. You will find that the opportunities are limitless and the success is all yours. Thank you.